7 years sitting on this, knowing that there is no end to this situation, and now all this dry cask storage is another way for them to try to force this stuff someplace. Also, in here, in this document, the stuff that I put together, is a rod consolidation meeting that took place at Prairie Island at 6:30 p.m. the 20th of August of 1987. And lo and behold, the people's names that are on here are the same people that are in charge of the dry cask storage. Laura McCartney, her name is on this document. She attended a meeting that, just like we're having here, to inform people what was going to happen with the low-level radioactive waste compact and how the rod consolidation program was supposed to work and how it was going to save space in the plant, and the plant would then be able to run to its full capacity of the 40 years. Well, that whole project failed miserably, and so they're not doing rod consolidation, and instead they developed the dry cask storage. Now, as we fought this dry cask storage and everything up, at that time there wasn't anybody else in Prairie Island. The community or nothing was watching what was going on. I tried to inform them and keep them aware of it, but I was the only one that was really writing letters and doing all kinds of things, and not even the environmental group were watching real close. There was one group that was interested, the rest weren't. And so, as the dry cask storage came on, the environmental people started to pay attention because of the hazard waste and all the other stuff that goes with it, and they began to start going with us and helping us, the reservation, fight what was going on up there. One of the main questions that kept coming up all the time when we were sitting in committees, talking to people and that, what they say, well, if we don't use this nuclear waste, there's not going to be electricity, we're going to lose some jobs, we're going to have tax revenue and all the other stuff that's going to get lost, and whole communities are going to go broke and we're going to be in bad shape. I tried to reiterate to them, and then they'd ask the environmental people, well, what is an alternative? Wait a minute, we're not in the energy business. Why do we have to have an alternative? You know, why do we have to create the alternative? We're not in the energy business. We're telling you you're causing hazardous waste, and it's going to pollute the river all the way to the Gulf of Mexico and then out into the ocean. So why do we have to write an energy policy for you people? That's what you guys are doing. Why aren't you doing it? I debated some of the people from NSP. As a matter of fact, I debated Hazel O'Leary before she became the Secretary of Energy. People in here probably don't know who Hazel O'Leary is. She is the Secretary of Energy, but she also was the Vice President of NSP.
Which is
Northern State. The Northern State Power Company. She was the Vice President under this man, Jim Howard. When I debated her at a gathering like this for the Council of Churches, the Minneapolis Council of Churches, and some of the reverends and stuff that were sitting around asked her, said, if this stuff is so safe, why don't you take it home with you? And she said, well, I would, except they have laws against that. You can't take it home with us, so we would take it home with us. All right? Some of the things that happened through that whole process was, now we've been fighting that for about 3 years up there, and as an end of that, we ended up making a book. And this is the alternate energy resources and stuff. I want to give it to somebody here, I don't know who. They gave me one copy. They usually, in here, I'll tell you that the cost of this is $25 for this book because it's got all the technology, including someone mentioned switchgrass here, methanol, and all kinds of other resources, wind, solar, and other things like that. And for corporations, like any of the big corporations and stuff that are dealing with this type of thing, they're charging $250 for a copy of it if they want it. Because that's their job to produce those type of things. When I debated, just recently, within the last month, I debated a NSP employee who was in charge, or partly in charge of this, and that was in the city of Cannon Falls. We asked a specific question saying, if you knew from 7 years ago that there was a problem storing this stuff, your company should have had the responsibility of doing something, some type of a study that would make alternate arrangement to run this vehicle. Just like if you're driving a car or something, you get a flat tire, you carry a spare, don't you? If you don't carry a spare, you better know a good mechanic that you can call any time of the night, day, or whatever. Well, we asked them to be specific and tell us what are your alternative plans? Number one plan was shut the plant down. Well, nobody wanted to hear that because that meant it was going to lose tax revenue and everything else. And the other plan was dry cask storage. They said, you're kind of crazy if you think that, you're only telling us one thing then. You're saying we're going to shut it down and everybody's going to lose their jobs and tax base and everything's going to be gone, or we're going to do dry cask storage. Why haven't you looked at other things? I also then brought in some of the things that make my community or my people kind of unique in things. Mentioned something about it last night, a little bit today when I was talking to someone about the EPA people saying that the only species on this planet that creates waste is human beings. And I said something to the effect, I think, last night, but I'm glad I'm not a human being. My people lived on this continent for thousands and thousands of years, and the people that are missing from the Senate hearing committees and all the other stuff that have to hear this are the anthropologists who can verify what I'm saying. Number one, even though I don't like anthropologists, but they're the ones that have the proof. Number one, they will start digging someplace and say, we know there was an Indian village here and we have carbon dated bones and broken vases and some other stuff here at this site, and we estimate these people have lived here for over 500 years, maybe 600 years of lived here. Ironic that there isn't a dump around that place. Anyway, not so much as just some accidental finding of maybe a piece of broken pottery or something else. So how did those people live at a particular site for 500 years and not have any waste? That's because when we went out and shot a buffalo, a deer, antelope, or fish, or anything that we did, that we got, we brought it home and we dried it by solar power, dried beef or dried buffalo, dried venison, dried berries, all kinds of things, and prepared that stuff for winter. And then it was stored not in a glass container, not in a plastic jar, not in a cardboard box, but in birch bark basket or buckskin bags and different things like that that were natural, that when somebody didn't use that, it just decayed, went back into natural. It can be there. I tried to emphasize this to those legislative people and those people that are sitting back there and saying, well, it's important that I go turn that switch on and there be light. You know, we're having a lot of problems. They're starting to have things on television and all kinds of other things explaining what the problem is with youth today. They're watching too much stuff on TV, violence, and all the other stuff. It'd be better off if we didn't have that electricity for them to watch that kind of violence, and they were a little more busy in the garden or a little more busy gathering something to dry and take home for themselves. With a little bit more controlled situation then. And that's some of the stuff that, and that's some of the things that have to be emphasized to the people who are making the laws in this country. They don't understand what was going on, that our people have lived here for thousands and thousands of years, and we're experts on that type of thing if they come and ask us. But nobody really wants to hear what I've heard that expression by a number of different people that say no pain, no gain. If we don't have some pain here with the rest of society on this world, we're all going to be losing. We're all going to lose. Not just the human beings, but everybody else who's with us is going to go. Yes.
Joe, what's the status of the dry cask storage decision being made, that alternative, and what can this group do at this point? Is there a critical date by which somebody's going to be reviewing something? What is it that we can do at this particular point in this issue?
Right now, at this time, it has gone before two committees. The one committee was Senator Novak's committee.
Committees of what?
Labor and something or another, and his committee is
Committees where?
at the state level.
Minnesota.
The state has
State of
Minnesota.
Minnesota.
What people don't realize about Minnesota, on our map here that we have of the Mississippi River Basin, what people don't realize about Minnesota is Minnesota was first picked, the very first site picked for storing high-level radioactive waste. I don't know how many people know that. Minnesota was picked because it has the oldest rock in the whole world, the oldest rock formations in the whole world, the deepest granite rock formations in the whole world. There's no older rock anywhere. They've already discovered that. Anthropologists and stuff know that. And it was picked at one time as a primary spot to store nuclear waste. And lo and behold, guess where those places were at? In the open pit mines and stuff that they've already dug. The mines are there already. I don't know if you people watch what's going on in what we call the backwater area, canoe area. There, you can't buy land there and build a home there anymore. Anyone that has a home there, when the people that live in it die, they destroy the home and it's out of there. They want nobody in there. The only way you can get into that area now is by canoe. You can't even have an outboard motor on your boat to get into that area. Well, because of that choice by the DOE in the beginning, the state of Minnesota passed legislation that said if any highly radioactive waste is going to be stored in the state of Minnesota, it has to be it was. In Minnesota, we are not only going to contaminate the Mississippi River, but if they start putting it in that north country, hey, 2/3 of this continent's water comes from Minnesota. Because the Red River runs north out of Minnesota into the Hudson Bay, and the St. Lawrence Seaway goes out through the Great Lakes all the way to the east, and everything to the south. Those 2/3 of the water in Minnesota, from Minnesota, is going to be contaminated. Yes.
Right the end.
Yeah.
Joe, aren't the aquifers in Minnesota flowing and charging? I mean, the aquifers in Minnesota, not just the river systems, but the groundwater. Isn't the groundwater flowing on?
Yes. Yeah.
Right, you're charging.
That's what I'm saying. If they start drilling into that deep aquifers and once they heat them stones up and everything, I try to use a lamp chimney. Excuse me for running a little long, but I try to use a lamp chimney as an example. If you like that, some of you people maybe you don't remember, but I remember when I was a kid because we didn't have electricity till about 1958 or something. But my sister and my cousins and stuff had these curling irons. You stick in a kerosene lamp. When you get it hot and then you curl your hair. And after it cool off, you stuck it back in that chimney and stuff. And they were monkey around and they had some water in their hands and maybe that water splash on that, get cracked. That's what frightens me about the dry cast storage. Because once that crack is there, the radiation that comes out of there, you can't see it, and there's nothing to leak because it's dry. It scares me. Yes?
Okay. I wanted to say something, Willie, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just, if I could see a show of hands of people around this table who either live in cities or states that are downriver, and I'm gonna tell you one last time, Joe, suggest one last time, quit calling it dry cast storage and call it radioactive waste dump on an island in the Mississippi River. Much more illustrative. And dry cast storage doesn't scare me at all. A radioactive waste dump in an island in the Mississippi River does. How many people, could I see a show of hands, of people who live in states or cities downstream of Minneapolis? You're downstream. You're in a state downstream of Minneapolis,
I'm gonna
right?
stay next to Minneapolis.
Okay, well, good.
Same thing.
Raise your hand.
You don't know Madison from Minneapolis, you see.
Is
That's
Wisconsin on the
right,
river?
that's why I was confused the other day, Bill.
Is Wisconsin on the river?
Yes.
Okay, you're in a state. But the reason I ask that is because that's who's gonna be affected. Mary Lee suggested that this afternoon, we figure out what we're gonna do on some of these issues. And I would suggest that everybody's got a stake in this. And that we decide that everybody ought to contact get people in our states, whatever legislators we can or whatever, and groups, particularly New Orleans where they drink all this stuff, to get some letters to the governor and the legislature of Minnesota, and make it a downstream issue. We all live downstream, and we're not gonna live well if we have a high-level radioactive waste dump. I don't know how, Joe, how you ever allowed them to put that.
Well,
Oh, it's
in
all
there.
his
First
fault.
of all-
All his fault.
first of all,
It's
that's
Joe's
another
fault.
thing that I didn't go
Without
back
telling
far enough
us
and
about it.
explain.
It's
But
Joe's
if we
fault.
talk about this afternoon, I can get into that.
Good.
I'll explain to you what happened. As a matter of fact,
Well, what we
some of the
need-
documents, I have the documents right here.
We don't need to know what happened, we
Heavy-handed
just,
tactics were used by the NSP to get that power plant built in the first place.
I know. I'm just giving him a hard, somebody has to give him a hard time. But if we could think collectively of what kind of action we could take this afternoon or suggest.
One of the, Joe, one of the things I'd like to suggest to us as a body is that when we bring this information to one another, it really would be helpful, John, if you had a little bit about Jefford's letter and the phone number for us. And if we could like have little action alerts, or if you wanna call them river bullets, or you wanna have them what's boiling on the river, or what's perking, or whatever Susie thinks would be an appropriate name. But while we're still sort of meeting, this interim steering committee, like, I don't know how to get in touch with the folks in Minnesota to help you, but if you could just have a little synopsis of who we call and what's it about, John, to also, don't you think that would help us? Because I think we all want to help on these various things, but we'll discuss that more.
I've got copies of the legislation that Senator Novak put together, and then a summary of his bill, and this is the copy of the actual legislation and stuff. And then I brought all kinds of newspaper articles and other things with me. She's making copies of them right now. Where they didn't even consult the reservation as the government body. I mean, we're recognized as a sovereign nation. And here this senator starts writing up a bill and says, well, we're going to give them Indians $2.2 million for 8 years. Every year for 8 years. We never asked for the money. Where are they going to give this money to us for? Why did they give it to us for? We never asked for it. There's statements in here that come from the vice chairman that says, why did you do this? Why do you make us look like we wanted money? We never asked. So we don't get any money from the plant. We don't get our electricity from the plant. We don't get nothing from the plant but headache. See?
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah,
Thank
okay.
you, Joe. We'll talk about it
Overran my
more in the
50
afternoon,
minutes.
but
Keep
we'll
working,
get it.
Joe.
Oh, I've
Yeah,
been
keep
banging.
going, Joe. Hang in there. Thank you, Bob. I think Roger, did you wanted to share? Was it Roger? About the CMA's responsible care?
Yeah,
Is it you?
I just wanted to mention,
Someone speaking on the floor.
several people commented about CMA and some of our activities, and
Chemical Manufacturers
the Chemical Manufacturing Association, right, and, I'm a member of their national, advisory, panel, public advisory panel, working on their responsible care program, and I've been working with them now for about 4 years, and, it's been an interesting experience, and I just, at some point, if people want to do a workshop or spend some time discussing what they're trying to do, and I have a pretty good insider's viewpoint of what they're trying to do, and there's without sounding an apologist for CMA, which I'm certainly not, let me say that there's a gulf bigger than the Mississippi River's length between some of the things CMA is doing at the national level and how that's being interpreted by various companies and plants at the local level. And I think some of the community advisory panels are simply nothing more than PR tools. They're places to be co-opted or to co-opt. I think it's a two-way street. Let me just say that the CMA itself is a very non-monolithic organization, despite what you might think of trade or associations. What I found about it is that the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing, and it's very frustrating for those of us who've been involved in this panel. And there are a number of people from the Sierra Club and various other groups involved in this panel, and we've had some interesting discussion and input. We went down to Mexico to meet Mexican environmental groups to discuss NAFTA, for example, and had a very lively discussion down there. I don't think the CMA appreciated it a whole lot. We visited one of their plants that's being sued, and we helped local citizens get access to some documents which they've been denied by the local plant by making it embarrassing for them. But having said that, the Responsible Care Program, which they initiated actually back before Earth Day, 1990, you may have seen their ads in magazines. They have a new series of TV ads, which are kind of cute, showing this little stick figure spotting a chemical plant distance and climbing up the smokestack. And then there's some kind of magical U-joint connecting these two smokestacks, and which is I keep pointing out to them that it's not it's not recycling, it's actually self-poisoning, but nevertheless, they're doing a very fancy program, and there is some interesting people involved in this program who have some very sincere motives. Having said that, the difference between those people and the folks who lobby on behalf of CMA, who are fighting us on the Clean Water Act, who are fighting us on Surplus Sarah, who are fighting on Right to Know, who are fighting on everything else, is just amazing. But I have about 2 file drawers full of materials, and if you ever wanted to see some of the things they're doing, I would be glad to share that material with people. The head of the Sierra Club's Toxics Committee is on this panel as well, and we often commiserate on it. It's an interesting panel because there are one thing about the panel is no lawyers on the panel, which is fascinating. They also they've had problems, and I think one of the issues I think this group might want to address, and I would be glad to take part in that. Frankly, I have 2 minds of this. On the CAPs, the community advisory panels, which have taken off like wildfire. 4 years ago, there were a handful of these CAPs around the country. Now they're numbered in the hundreds. And some companies take them very seriously and work very hard to get a broad base of true public out there involved. Others take them as a means of doing window dressing and finding select citizens. They have a CAP over here at Monsanto, over in Sauget, Illinois. And when our National Advisory Panel came, we met with folks in that CAP. Then we set up a meeting with folks in the community who live next door to Sauget. And it's interesting the fact that not only those folks were not on the panel, they didn't know the panel existed. And what the panel was doing, supposedly advising them about pollution and stuff, instead were turned into a little sponge committee that sort of advised them how to deal with their corporate gifts. Give money to a gymnasium here or that, something else. And the real community issues of toxics, of emergency response, of a notice of notification were being totally ignored. I think one of the debates that's been interesting though, and I've heard people today, say things about it, and I've heard this argument over and over again, is do you ignore the CAPs and not participate in them because you don't lend any credibility to them, or do you get involved and just stir up as much trouble as you can for these folks through the process. It does gain you access to materials and information that you don't easily get other ways. And I think the arguments can go both ways in this. And but like I say, I have about 4 years experience dealing with them. And people have always do that sometime, maybe at an annual meeting. There is one. I'd be glad to help out in that, and there's other folks who would too.
But they put a nice table over for East St. Louis High School.
Oh, yeah.
But they didn't increase the library there.
No, but can I have the racial makeup of the national committee?
Pardon?
The racial makeup of the national CAP
panel?
and also the income diversity?
Pardon?
The income diversity
Income
as well as
diversity?
the racial makeup?
Okay, well, the racial makeup, there's one Afro-American.
For the whole nation?
Well, the panel's not that big. The panel's only 15 people. So it's not a huge panel. But there is only one African-American.
And that person's from?
Baton Rouge. And he's a
Who is it,
professor.
Roger?
Pardon?
Who is it, please?
Southern.
Bob Ford?
No. He's a professor of chemical engineering at LSU.
Yeah, but
Lee somebody.
let me ask this question.
Yeah.
What Afro-American represents an impacted community by the chemical manufacturing?
Well, in some of the CAPs, there are a lot of people. There are people
National, because the national gets a view of what's going on through the nation.
That's exactly right. The panel, we have. Well, let me say 2 things. First of all, they've been very poor about getting a lot of types of representation, not just African American and not just impacted communities. They have tried in a couple of cases, and groups have turned them down, refused to supply somebody. I don't think they've tried very hard. I mean, sort of self-fulfilled prophecy. You ask a couple of groups, and they say no, and they say, well, no one wants to do it. I can give you a list of everybody's on the panel if you'd like. And
I'd like to know how to impact that. How do you get dialogue started about more inclusion process as well as diverse income? Because people from lower economics have historically been denied access to information as well as participation in the American process. This has just been historic. So my question would be that we must consider the economic diversity of such a group an opportunity to afford these people who are from these backgrounds as well as impacted communities. What's the use of putting someone on a panel that is not impacted by an issue? They have a different view, being not impacted.
Delaying cap is a big source of controversy in Louisiana on that issue. Just
I
being
talked to Duke about it.
but you might, I mean, if you should talk about the cap plans in your area, I would think, and getting folks on that if you feel comfortable with having them participate. I mean, that would be my suggestion.
No.
Roger, don't you think? No.
Well, I think he's asking too, but he's asking the National Advisory
Thank
Panel,
you.
which is not a cap, it's a very different thing.
Yeah.
You asked about economic status. I would say that it varies. There's no one on the panel who's from very rich, but there's no one on the panel who's very poor. It's probably pretty much middle class panel.
Right. I just want to point out the fact that most communities that house the manufacturing facilities are in poor communities, not middle class, not rich, but in poor communities. I think that only fairness dictates that they be represented on the national panel.
That's something we've insisted on at certainly that all the CAPs would have that kind of representation. We have sought that input where we've met. We move around the country and we meet. We meet 4 times a year, and we have tried every time we've met somewhere to find representation, and we've gone outside the chemical industry to find that representation. We met in Raleigh-Durham one time, and we were discussing the issue of environmental racism. And it was interesting because we got off the subject of chemicals altogether because the issue down there was on organized corporate hog farming and the impact on it. And we had a very lively discussion about that subject, which CMA thought was totally inappropriate for us because it had nothing to do with them per se. But I say we have gone our way to find those kind of things. I don't know.
1 minute to wrap up.
Okay, yeah, I'm just saying, if anyone has any ideas they'd like to pass on to the National Advisory Panel, I'd be glad to take them on. Any suggestions you have?
Yeah, let me just suggest one more thing. Hog farming has a direct correlation to chemicals. That correlation is this, that when you put a dump somewhere, you attract another dump. It makes it neighborhood suitable. What I'm saying is that if you have a chemical manufacturing facility, what that invites as that kind of permitted facility as a hog farm. They're compatible.
That's exactly what we thought.
So, so there is a connection there.
Yeah. I'm just saying CMA thought there was no connection, but we did.
Right, I think it is too.
And but it is an interesting issue, and I've gone around with a number of our colleagues from local and national environmental groups of whether being a part of this panel is a good thing or a bad thing. And I guess my bottom line is, last thing I'll say is that for all the meetings I've gone to, I've learned more about them and how to deal with them than they've learned from me about how to deal with me.
Let me thank you for your participation in that, because some people would not have been able to. But I want to personally thank you for your participation in that, because someone needs to be at the table.
That was my feeling, but I say I've had 2 minds of it. But again, if you want to get into the subject at some point, because CMA is not going to go away, and this issue of caps is not going to go away. It's their new nirvana. They think they found a new religion in this, and they're serious about it.
So what we need to do
We'll
is
address
get
that.
involved in the caps like Marilee said.
Right.
Yeah. We'll talk more about that this afternoon, maybe caps, et cetera. Willie, did you have
Well,
something?
just I think there's a lot of interest in
Strategizing.
maybe we could have a committee to advise you and some of the other members who are interested.
Okay. Scott, you want to talk to us about blood control policy reform?
This is sort of in the context of what's already been said about generally what the alliance can do, and I think the proof of the power of the group, or all of the group working together, has been what's happened so far in reaction to the flood. You may or may not have heard that we had 2 big victories because many of you got on letters to key members of Congress, to the administration, calling for funding for relocation, calling for funding for wetlands conversion, and calling for stopping funds for levee repairs that aren't justified or aren't eligible. And what we've been able to do is we've gotten Congress to appropriate about $660 million for relocation. That a big chunk of that just came in the past 3 weeks when the earthquake bill moved through Congress. So we're going to move parts or all of 200 towns and upwards of 10,000 structures from the floodplain. All of that land that's cleared will always be maintained in open space use to forever. And the other, probably more important victory in terms of ecological restoration is that we're gonna convert probably upwards of 150,000 acres of flooded farmland to wetlands forever. And a big,
What's the number again? What was it?
Somewhere SCS estimates they've gotten $100 million, 85 of which just came in about 3 weeks ago, to convert willing floodplain farmland to wetlands. And so we'll convert about 150,000 acres is what they think. And to put that in perspective, that's about a third of all of the wetlands lost in the Missouri River floodplain over the last 50 years to navigation channelization projects. So it's a huge amount. What's happening now is that there are essentially two things. One is this White House task force is about to release its results probably in June or July. And what we can tell from that is that they'll be focusing on strictly on, as I mentioned earlier, just on conveyance issues. What happens when the water gets into the main stem, not where does the water come from. So essentially they're looking at the effects of flooding. How do you deal with the flood once it's right down here in St. Louis, instead of looking at how do you start to address problems within the watershed, wetlands lost within the watershed that actually increase your flooding problems down here. And the solutions they're looking at, believe it or not, are levees, where you put more levees to set
Which group is this?
This is the Galloway task force.
Well, I was on that, and that's not in our report. I was facilitated for one of those things, and I think Joe was on it, but the whole point, I'm in touch with, no, that's not going to go out. We've asked for, the final report isn't out. We all
The
have.
final report isn't out, that's right.
Right, so there's chances to say, like, when we got my part, like Joe, and I didn't see it in there, I didn't see a lot of things in there. I think we have an opportunity to say.
Well, there's been no, where that's at is that's been going on in bits and pieces since September. And what's happened is they've broken it up into a bunch of teams. One of the teams is in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and at the Aeros Data Center, looking at modeling stretches of the river. And the model this gets into all sorts of technical stuff that exhausts the limits of my one hydrology course, but the model they're using essentially doesn't look at floodplain storage issues, watershed storage issues.
They don't want.
And that's right, they don't want to. And they're not there are some hydrologists on the task force, but they're not playing a dominant role. And so we're concerned about the results of the modeling. We're also concerned that the ecologists who are on the task force, who I'm in pretty constant contact with, say that they don't feel like their views are being fairly represented, that the report that will come out will address just flooding. It will not address how do you deal with flooding in concert with broader ecosystem restoration problems.
Well, this is something I'm gonna talk about. If that's the
So
report out, we need to jump.
So what I'm saying is,
Yeah.
what I'm getting to is, how do we, I think as the Alliance, I think this is an opportunity for the Alliance to respond.
Exactly.
So, the influence that we can have on what the task force is doing is somewhat limited, but I think that when it comes out and we get a sense of what it says, we respond pretty strongly to what we see as its weaknesses. And that's sort of one thing that I wanted to just let people know is going on.
150,000 acres, is that gonna be scattered all over the Midwest?
Yeah, it's primarily, along the Missouri, in the Columbia area. It's in big chunks. The Columbia area of the Missouri, there's a bunch at the confluence of the Iowa and the Mississippi in southeastern Iowa. There's a bunch in northwestern Iowa in Des Moines and that in the sub-watersheds up there. There's very little in Illinois. And it's all based on a willing basis. Farmers have applied to enroll in the Wetlands Reserve Program, and SCS has done a pretty good job of marketing it, they've gotten a lot of response. But ultimately, it comes down to, do you wanna take your land out of production or not?
How much time we have on it? Why don't you go back and give the genesis of this and
The motor,
the motor on this, the motor's
what's the
been-
drive?
Right.
The motor on the task force? or-
Yes, but I'm unclear as the forces that are driving this. There seem to be some holes there in your description.
Right.
Just do that.
The task force has got eight representatives from all of the federal agencies that you would suspect would be dealing with something like this. And really, and then they took it out, they took the task force and they broke it into teams. And one of the teams is looking at, general policy, floodplain policy issues, flood insurance, what's wrong with the flood insurance program. And we're not so worried about what they're gonna say. We're more worried about what the data team is gonna say. And they're basically modeling big stretches of the river. And the model that they're using is a HEC2 model, which probably some of you know about.
Where's the motor though? Who is driving?
Well,
we have a kind of lead.
Really USGS is in the driver's seat in terms of the data collection.
Corps of
The
Engineers.
Corps of Engineers also is very strongly represented. And basically, if I'm gonna sound like a paranoid conspiracy theorist, I'm gonna tell
Sound
you
like what?
that USGS and the Corps are basically jerry-rigging this thing.
They
And it's not
really
that they're-
nice. That's what they do.
Right, that's right.
Well, the Corps is being paid by USGS to do it. I mean, USGS is being paid by the Corps, they don't have money.
That's right.
That's the big
The
Corps,
big problem
He's
is,
in the building.
the excuse they'll say is, okay, what we would want is we would want the modeling to be done in such a way so that you're measuring the value of wetlands and flood control. Easy call. They say it costs too much, can't do it in 6 months either. So, short of doing that, right, and short of doing the job that we all think they should do, they're doing the job that they always do, which is the one that justifies levies.
Yes, that's what I'm
And it took us a while to sort of figure out that's what was going on, but that's sort of the score at this point. What you're gonna, the best of all worlds that we're gonna get from them is gonna be some kind of setback system. And probably more so in the Missouri than in the Mississippi. Maybe just a coincidence, but that would justify lots of core appropriations.
Right.
Go figure.
Surprise!
Surprise.
This is very interesting. They had 3 meetings, of which we had people, we asked when they, I think this is County Hunt World Wildlife Fund, put these on, and we were asking, why are they doing this? Why is World Wildlife Fund picked to do this?
They pick themselves.
They picked themselves and they
Well,
were saying,
and to their credit, it was something that had to be done.
it had to be done, but it was, we were warned going in, and like you, Roger, should we do this or should we not? Should we do this dance? Joe and I did this dance over in Winona. And if we really will have access if this doesn't come out.
Well, I think they're
We'll
listening.
work on that stuff.
We'll work on that this afternoon. Right.
The only other thing I would mention briefly is that there's 2 other big things going on with the Corps of Engineers. One is their biannual reauthorization process is this year. And given all the attention the Corps is getting because of the flood, there's gonna be a real opportunity to change some of the missions of the Corps of Engineers. And this is something that's happened over the last 8 years where they've got an increasingly more environmental mission. So they say, right? And we're gonna try and continue that process, and I think the Alliance should play an important role in that. And then the other side of the coin is the Corps' annual appropriations. And really the real lesson here is that even though the Corps has gotten this environmental mission, that 99% of the money they get from Congress goes to levees, dams, dikes, channelization, all the bad stuff. And a lot of that's in the Mississippi River Basin. So the timing is that the authorization issues, the Water Resources Development Act issues, will be May, June. The appropriation stuff is going right now, and we're going to submit a statement for the record, early next month that I'm going to circulate to all of you folks. So if you can get your organizations on it, there'll be projects in your areas that we say, hey, this is Turkey, take another look or stop it. So consider whether or not your group can join those conferences.
Is this an opportunity to do an educational assault on the Corps of Engineers? I mean,
Absolutely.
can we, with our coordinator, put together an opportunity to dialogue and to educate, be educated and to educate the Corps as to what environmental restoration should be?
They know what it is.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't think so, because the Corps historically has been involved in digging dirt
Right.
and putting up dams, tearing down dams, and moving dams,
There are people within the Corps who understand, hydrological connections
Correct.
and habitat values. It's just that, the restoration projects tend to stink. And secondly, they don't get a lot of money to do them at all.
But also the leadership
that
has
has to be
educated about the
long-term.
concern and being, to empower those people within the Corps to see the other side, to do it the way they think may be right. I think an educational effort.
follow orders in the military.
Right, that's what I'm saying, the educational effort over time might pay some dividends.
Well, there's certainly an opportunity because the administration still hasn't appointed someone to be head of the Corps.
Yeah, I've
believe it or
noticed
not. And there's a lot of stuff going on with that I won't go into.
I'm
but-
sure Paul is gonna talk about
But
this.
when that
Yeah,
person
we need to
was
wind
appointed,
this up in minutes,
okay,
I think.
when that person is appointed, that might be a time for the Alliance to get in and start to get that person.
We're gonna be talking more about this too this afternoon, I know. Daryl, you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing in. Another handle we might be looking at is the whole contaminated sediment issue that is, the Corps is scared the hell out of that. And we need to really push that in the Clean Water Act to get the Corps to deal with that issue because it's a serious problem. Not only in the Great Lakes, it's every place. And, that's a way to hammer these guys. You can't do it. If they can't do a clean, dredging because they're gonna poison the water, we got a hammer to nail these guys. We need to nail them some more.
You know what Dr. Hicks told us that was shrinking?
Yes. Yes. We'll have to get you all that information, huh?
Yes.
Keter Montague's newsletter had it too. Yeah.
Just to
Okay.
sum up one.
Yeah, sure, Scott, I'm sorry, go
Just to sum
ahead.
up, I keep hearing this idea that we need to start to focus on the issues that we want to deal with as an alliance. And maybe that's something that Susie figures out and starts to prioritize, but, just to put in my 2 cents, I think this clean water designation bill is a great place for this group to start and focus its energies, because it's one of the things that takes a whole river approach that we all share. And, it's something that, won't get well represented in Washington because, basically it'll be Robin Marks with NRDC and myself, trying to spend as much time as we can on it. And, Robin is constrained right now in terms of her time, and so am I. So, maybe as we set priorities, we can start to think about that. It's something that'll happen in the next 3 months, and it might be a good jumping off point for the Alliance to work, more in an organized way.
Scott, you can talk about that more after lunch, aren't you? You're supposed to, on the agenda. Okay, anybody else? I know Larry, you had something you wanted to share with us about some drums and things that you didn't have time before?
Well, real quick, I won't take but a minute. I'm asking everybody here to take a minute to view these color Xeroxes I have here. What I'd ask from all of you is just a letter of support on your letterhead, go back to your group, to the EPA. EPA they've got a pending action against, this is a drum recycling place, ongoing, to the EPA, urging them to move forward with their cleanup, to do the right thing. And basically, I'm going to do a memorandum to everybody on the mailing list with the proper addresses and all that. This sort of FYI, know what I'm talking about when it comes to you. Simple, clean little letter from everybody, just saying. Now, this is in the middle of Memphis, low-income African-American community, right in the middle of the community. It's ongoing. Materials, this is a drum recycling place. They take the drums in, dump the waste out in the ground, keep going. It's been ongoing for about 10 years. It just kind of goes on and on and on and on. This material is both those Xeroxes actually show it flows right off into the storm drain, goes right down the creek, goes right in the Mississippi River. It's only about 2 miles away.
What's the name of the site again?
It's a little company called W&R Drum. It's written on the bottom of that, W&R Drum. And again, I will send out, as soon as I get home, a little letter to everybody here, so you don't have to.
Do we have those in every one of our communities? They
recycle drum someplace, there's probably one in St. Louis and one in.
They're not always,
Well,
they're not
yeah.
necessarily that bad.
Yeah, not wanting to spend a whole lot of time on this, but just to, yes, you do. Yes, you do. We have a site on north side of town that the owner, very similar to this fellow, just walked off and left it, and the EPA's Emergency Response Remediation Branch hit the ground with the moon suits and pulled the stuff out. This is a pattern. This is kind of a drum recycling facility that's falling the cracks in a regular circular world. So it's a real weird world. This is egregious.
Larry,
Let's do.
one thing I think you told me, and I think we need to let our people know, is the owner of this is an African American person who is playing on, he's done this to his community, and he's using the thing that he's a poor African American businessman, therefore EPA shouldn't enforce the law as strongly. That's, how people, I don't care what color they are, there's some folks that don't do the right thing. So, we need to, let people know that.
That's it. Oh, yes, Evan?
Yes,
ma'am. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Okay.
Sir,
I said, yes, ma'am. Certainly. Sir, certainly.
just something that's very, very personal to me and all Native Americans is if you find or become aware of skeletal remains of Native Americans, if you could please let me know. I'm on the national committee for reburial and reclaiming of the skeletal. I don't mean funerary items or anything. I don't even get into that. We just want to be sure that the reburial happens. So if any of you in your work run across anything that you think I need to know about, I know I can't go up to Minnesota, but there's someone standing by in Minnesota to take care of things up there. And we've got the Mississippi River covered, but because of the flooding, it's become real evident that a lot of our burial sites were on the river. And because a lot of the skeletal remains were exposed. So if you happen to run across a situation like that, I'm listed. You all have my address, my phone number. Give me a call, and I'll just take it from there. I really appreciate it.
I don't know if this is appropriate or whether we want to deal with it later, but somehow we talked back in one of the last meetings about how to handle issues like this and people signing on. And I don't know whether we want to deal with that this afternoon, but in issues like this, there should be a sheet, an informational sheet, and it goes out to members in a regular mailing list and a procedure that we can get that stuff out, because Joe's stuff could be gotten out to every member and reacted to. We need to develop that somewhere along here. And
We're going to talk about after lunch, Bob,
Okay.
for sure. Leroy?
Just a quick one. I was thinking after Joe talked, what we should have our members do that come up with an issue like this is make up a short issue statement with all the things we need to know. For example, in Iowa, you could probably talk state legislatures and the governors into going after the Minnesota legislature and saying, hey, we don't want that crap down here.
Right.
So write the issue statement and tell us how to deal with it.
And that has to go to
Yes.
two, there's a procedure and a stamp that this came in, or there's a committee, or how do we handle this? We talked about that one time.
Right, and we're gonna go into that this afternoon, how we can get the information out. One suggestion that was made, though, is if we get right now the information to Gwen, you agreed to take it on. Larry, maybe instead of mailing it out to us all individually, if you just get it to Gwen, she'll get it to us.
It's just as fast for me to do it. I can do it
Okay,
before you think
well,
about it.
for those folks who don't wanna do that,
Makes no difference to me.
for me, it'd
Less
probably
work
be
for Gwen.
easier to get it to Gwen and Gwen to get it to
Yeah,
everybody, so
I was thinking about that, because I can't possibly keep up with all the details that people report on each of the issues. I would say, okay, can you send me, a one-sheeter or some material I can put together, and then in one fell swoop I can,
But I think what you've got is that we pay for it, and Larry's saying he'll pay for it, and we can get it approved by somebody, and then he stamps, I mean, if you put your stamp on it and send it back and Larry sends it out, then he's using his mailing resources to get that out rather than us, because we have limited resources. So I think that as long as it goes through, and if we get something, there's a stamp on it that says approved by, then that goes out through the procedure. And it's
you mean approved by like the Alliance?
I don't know, just
I think we're talking about two things. I think we're talking about individual groups approving or disapproving of an activity, and we're also what I'm also hearing you say about this the
Information.
alliance.
Yeah.
And I think that needs, in terms of structure, needs to be looked at a little differently.
We, something that
We
we
did,
actually,
we
talked
started
about-
something on that for the Alliance.
That's true, but some of this is just information
Right.
dissemination, and some of this
Right.
is
Is
what does
substance.
the alliance say
Right.
about it?
It's
Yeah.
not that we approve it, it's just that this is stuff that's passed on and
Right.
it's going through some sort of approval procedure that this is, the person's a recognized member, the group is, or something, and pay attention to it, throw it away, whatever you wanna do.
Okay.
I was, real quick, two things. First, I'll let, this is Rick. Rick is with a group here with the Gateway Greens. I became, made aware of a situation of a medical waste incinerator being proposed for the middle of St. Louis, not too far from here. Thursday when I came in, I was in, a church basement, yet again, with about 100 or so, people from Acorn and other environmental organizations here who are strategizing about fighting this, the St. Louis Hospital Association, who's wanting to put this medical waste incinerator in this community on the other side of Forest Park here. And later on this evening, after we have dinner, some of us are going to meet with these people over in U City and offer help to them because they're at a very elementary state, as things have been done in other places before, and there's a lot of knowledge here that we can impart with some of the people. Rick, you want to say something real quick?
I just want to remind people that you are in the center of 50 years of radioactive waste. The Manhattan Project bomb material was processed here. They've got crap all over the area in a big place on the St. Charles, just across the Missouri River from us. So we're 20 or 30 years ahead of you guys up in Mississippi. And right now we're in the process of about 5 incinerator proposals that are in the process of trying to get permits for St. Louis area. The most famous one is probably the Times Beach Superfund site with the Oxen. But we got the medical waste incinerator that they couldn't get in the county, so they moved it into the city where there's no regulations on it. And then there's also a proposal to make a big trash to energy incinerator down by the riverfront. So all the stuff can blow down to Judy.
And also, I'd like to say, talk to people. We have up here, we're kicking off our eco-region program with Big River Washington Week, where we're going to have upwards of 50, 100 of people on the task force of the Mississippi River Basin Alliance program in the Sierra Club. We're going to Washington to do lobbying of agencies, education with congressional staff, and a number of other things.
We spoke about that this morning.
I did this already?
Yeah.
It's okay. It's been a long day already.
We know what you were drinking last
We
night.
forgot. I gotta hear
It's
something
okay
5 or 6
though,
times.
good to hear it twice. John, I wanna thank you.
First thing this morning.
John, I wanna thank you for your pesticide reform and sustainable ag stuff and the mining stuff, and I know you're gonna get us that number again if we need it. Joe for the Prairie Island stuff, we'll be talking more about this afternoon. Roger for the CMA stuff, we're gonna talk more about cat plants. Scott, as always, is keeping us informed about the levees and the Corps and what's going on. And Larry and the drums, and everything about the burials, I appreciate it. Okay, and I think we actually have made it with 4 minutes to spare, and then we're gonna have a great lunch, and you did great, thank you this morning. I don't know, where's lunch, Mr. Bill, Mr. Wynn, right down the hall?
Apologies. We had lined up about 10 dancers to come, but in the last 2 days, we have had, there's a Memorial Indian celebration going on right across the river in Illinois today, and we had a loss in the community, so some people are very, very traditional and they won't participate in the dancing or a program like this. They immediately go into a time of mourning. So that's where our dancers are. But I have 2 children here with me today. One is Cherokee and one is Tlingit Indian from up north. I'll tell you a little bit about them when we bring them out. But just real quickly, and Joe, ordinarily a woman does not pick up this drum and use it. but I've come to the magic age of 60 years old, so I'm considered an elder now. And I teach. 41 different tribes represented here in St. Louis, and I teach the children. And in that teaching, some of it is to teach them how to dance and how to get out there and participate in our ceremonial gatherings and try to help them to retain the culture. We're in an urban setting. Early 50s, the federal government had this wonderful plan to uplift the standard of living of the American Indian. So they got mom, dad, and the children from the different reservations, brought them to urban settings like St. Louis, Detroit, Michigan, California, New York, points north and south. Gave them $1,500 per family and said, here, you can have a whole new life for yourself. Well, as a result of that, we have quite a population of Indian people in the metropolitan St. Louis area, approximately 6,000, representing 41 different tribes. And this wonderful plan, as we see it now, was just another form of genocide because they disrupted families on the reservation. We know that that wasn't enough money to get started on, and the families didn't know how to even fill out employment applications, much less go into rental agreements. So as a result of that, the American Indian Center came into being, and it's a social service agency. The children we've got here for you are very beautiful children, and before they dance, I'm going to bring them out and talk to you about what they've got on. Jamie, you want to come this way? This is Jamie Evans. Jamie is Quicket Indian from Alaska. And Jamie was born and raised right here in St. Louis. And in the way that Indian people are, no matter where you go, you meet the family. Joe's family now. That's the first time I've been able to see him. That's my brother. I just put a name to that brother. Okay. Same way, Jamie calls me Grandma. And that's not just her calling me Grandma. Her mama has a problem with her. Maybe she's not doing her homework or something. Then the big guns called in, Grandma. And so Jamie very respectfully addresses me as grandmother. And in that respect we have for one another. You know, she's mine. And I guess that's the reason that I'm a part of this group here. Because right here is where it's all at. And I'd just like to describe, I'm very proud of the fact that SIU Edwardsville has asked Jamie to represent them for the next year as their Indian princess. So it's quite an honor. She has the crown and the sash that goes with it, and we're very proud of that. What Jamie is wearing is typically the dress of the Southern women. Forever and ever and ever, you've read in the history books the word squaw. That's a very, very derogatory term. It means a woman's private part. And this dress was commonly called the squaw dress. We're fighting that little battle to change that. This is a cloth dress. The cloth was originally given to us by commodity issues given by the federal government to Indian people. There were 25-pound bags of flour and rice. The one thing that the federal government didn't do was to explain to us how to cook the food. We didn't have any pots and pans. So, being very grateful, our old people take the commodities and put them in the river and ask that river, you know, you're this holy water, you take this blessing and do with it whatever. I'm going to use this cloth. So our Indian women then found that it was much easier to make the cloth dress and not have to, the restrictions, the guns were taken away, so they couldn't go out and hunt the deer anymore and make the buckskin. So that's the reason we have the calico dresses. And today we still try to keep in touch with that. Around Jamie's middle, she's wearing an apron. That was a very important part of a Southern women's dress. The men also had the apron, but most times it was rolled up and worn like a sash around their middle, because that could be taken and put over, I'll take James' shawl. Like so, gathered up here, and you could put baby behind you, either facing towards you or away from you. Take this, tie it, and you can just go ahead about your business, because baby's safe, it's with you, it's not gonna get in any trouble. A lot of times when, and especially true of the Comanche, which I'm a member of that tribe, we always had somebody chasing us. You know, I kind of think it's because we were always going over like Spanish, you know, and Mexicans. They was always chasing us. But at night we'd go over and borrow some stuff for them. Like them horses and themselves. I guess that's the reason. But in our movement, there's a lot of flat area into Oklahoma and Texas and that. And the whole tribe moved together, young people, old people, the warriors, the children. Well, when nature called, you just went away from the group a little bit. You had your portage body with you. Everything that we wore had a purpose other than to dress your body. Okay? On Jamie's feet, she's wearing some boots. And they're made out of deer hide. They're decorated very pretty, but in the old days that was just, if you look at that and not see the beads and the pretty spots on them, that was the way that the boots were made for the women of the South. And coming from area of rattlesnake country and that, it was always folded down from the knee to make a double thickness so that if you accidentally upset a rattlesnake and this way, it would hit a double thickness of hide before it got to your leg. In her hand, she carries a beautiful fan, and this wasn't for cooling you. This was for giving a prayer of thanksgiving and a prayer and a hope that the winged creatures would survive in this world. And I think that's what we're about. Cleaning the environment so these creatures can continue to be with us so we can have them for a long time. And as she waves it around like that, it's like bless the people in this room because they're special people. And I just want to share my love with them and ask you, Creator, to watch over them for me. They got a long way to go when they leave here. And when our children use that thing like that, and their feathers like that, that's what they're asking. That your trip will be as safe as a bird flying without any threat of someone having a gun to shoot them out of the air. Okay? I think we'll call Julian out now. This is Julian. Julian is a little Cherokee Indian boy. And we're just going to start from the top and go right down. And you'll see, turn around this way, that Julian is wearing feathers that are, except for the very tips in their natural state, he has different types of hawk feathers, okay, on his head. Julian isn't old enough. When he gets older and goes through a rite of passage, then he will have eagle feathers here. And always when we gather for our ceremonial dances and we have our processional come in, they go in a circle. And the head dancer is moving his head from one side, saying that prayer again. For anybody that's gathered there and saying, bless this ground, so that while we dance on it, everybody's going to get a blessing. Maybe there's somebody that's ill or something. They step out here on this ground, they're going to find healing from you. And that's just about everything we did and still do is a prayer. But you know, unlike organized religion, we don't have to kneel on a wooden pew in the church and kind of be a little aggravated because our knees hurt. We make praying easy, you know. And it's because we use the things that the Creator gave us in its natural order. It's a natural state. He has a porcupine headdress made from the porcupine guard hair. Has deer hair on the outside for decoration. I don't know where the word roach came from, but that's what this is called. It's just a headdress, a headpiece. The older men in the old days wore it sitting about like so. And with these youngsters coming in and not knowing how to keep that on their head, then we've moved it forward and got a tie underneath his neck so he can better keep that on his head. Calico shirt again comes from the same way that Jamie's dress comes from. The feather, same as Jamie's. In his left hand, he's holding a coup stick. And our honor system was very different. When our men would go out in battle, they figured if you could touch your enemy with that stick, touch him, let him live, your enemy was totally disgraced and you really didn't have to kill him. Because in a way, you were embarrassing. On his legs now, he has his pants are leggings. They come on separately. And down around the ankle, he's got also provided by the animal world, the deer, he has dew claws. Now that's what we had. The toes of the deer is what we use for noisemakers and clackers before we got the sleigh bells with the westward expansion and the coming in of sleigh bells. Now, our modern Indians will wear the sleigh bells, but if you want to really be traditional, you stick with the old ways. And you use as much as you can the things that were there for you in their natural order. Down on Julian's, underneath his bustle, we have a, excuse me, a couple of tabs. And usually deer hide, a buffalo hide, tail, bear's tail, or something was tied to that. So that, and that was always worn in peacetime as well as ceremonial time. And today we wear them symbolically, but what those were there for was if a man was going and rushing and maybe inadvertently stepped in a soft spot, someone was trailing him, that would drag behind and drag out his tracks. See? So, enough talk, I'm going to show you that these kids really came down. And one of the things that I'm very proud of these children for is that they're always happy when they come out like this, and they love to share. And, I've done all the talking here, and they were very respectful of it, but either one of these two children, as young as they are, could go out and give you the same information that I've given. And that makes me very proud of them. Okay, we have Julian, and the way he dances is called the traditional style. And the traditional style of dancing, it's the common name for it is old man style. Okay, but in his dance, you know, you told a story either of the hunt or on the warpath, and his actions are much different than you see some of these. Probably some of you have been to powwows where they have the big feather outfits and they're fancy and they're out there doing all kind of gymnastics, and most of us Indian people that are traditional don't know what they're doing. I think last powwow I attended, I had one of those young men come up from Oklahoma, and he was doing that dance where you slide, what do you call it? No, modern dance. Break dancing. That's what he was doing. He had his Indian clothes on, you know. I had to walk away from that one. about you, and he's been kind of reserved and respectful, you know, because he don't really know you guys. And, you know, he thinks you're these very important people, which I told him. From up and down, you know, that you're just gonna clean up the whole Mississippi River, so he's kind of got you way up here. And he is a many times champion traditional dance winner. He's danced from up and down the Mississippi River. The last honor I think he got was in a competition in Memphis, Tennessee. So he's well known for his dancing. Let me just run through, I know we have an expert storyteller here, but I'm going to steal a little bit of his thunder. You know, there was a time, a long, long time ago, when there was nobody here, right here where we're at, nobody here but the animals. We had the big animals, we had the little animals. They got into an argument. The big animals, the bear, alligator, tiger, lion, they want to be day all the time. The little animals, the chipmunk, the rabbit, the squirrel, they wanted it to be day all the time. The large animals wanted it to be night all the time. The little animals wanted it to be day all the time. So they come in this clearing in this woods, and a great big tree had fallen there. And they were going to decide whether it was going to be day all the time or night all the time. I'm talking to you about a time so long ago that the bear had a great big long tail, and the chipmunk was one solid color. The bear was going to talk for the large animal, and the chipmunk was going to talk for the little animals. So they come to this clearing, all these animals around, big tree trunk laying there. This little chipmunk had run up on this tree trunk, pump his little arms and say, I want it to be day all the time, day all the time. And the big old bear would growl at him and say, I want it to be night all the time, night all the time. Little chipmunk could run back up on that tree trunk, pump his little arm, I want it to be day all the time, day all the time. Bear would growl back, I want it to be night all the time, night all the time. This went on all day, and it was starting to get in the afternoon. Bear, every time that little chipmunk went up on that tree trunk, he was getting so mad. The chipmunk, he wasn't scared, so he didn't know that this big guy was getting mad at him. There's a little alligator laying there. He's thinking, uh-oh, that big guy's getting mad, and that little one's going to need help. Sure enough, that bear was thinking, next time that little guy runs up on that tree trunk, I am going to take my big old paw and I am going to smush the life out of it. Sure enough, that little chipmunk went running up on the tree trunk. And before he could pump his little arms and say, I want it to be day all the time, the bear thought, I've had it. He raised his great big paw, and just as he's slamming down on the little chipmunk, the alligator says, I've got to help. So the alligator opens his great big mouth. The chipmunk sees what's happening. He jumps to one side, and the bear scratched him right down his back with his great big claw. About that time, the alligator clamps his mouth shut. And to this day, the bear has a little stubby tail. Chipmunk, he's got a mark right down his back. And it's still day and night. I told you that little short story for this reason. We have all kind of dances. And one of the dances can eagle dance, we have the rabbit dance, and we have dances that honor, the buffalo dance, that honor these different animals that help them survive. We're going to do for you now, and these kids hate it, the little children's chipmunk dance. Because I don't have the numbers. But that's just a little bit of what our kids are learning yet today, and trying to hold on to things for them. And like I said, maybe now you can better understand my interest and my love for you people and what you're doing. And we're gonna get it done. We're gonna get it done. This man has taken care of a very traditional way. He's proud of his kids, and he's saying thank you to them in a special way. Before, you know, that we used to give clothing, meat, and horses and things like that, and now we don't have all those things to give. So what he's got is he's got some money down here, and these two little kids can take this and buy them a pop or a hamburger or something. Thanks, Joe. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd only heard of it before in relation to baseball.
Wasn't it dancing wonderful? Oh, boy.
So it's,
I'm so happy this is only one.
Well, I wasn't
There's
even
the color
invited. Yeah, I wasn't
Yes. Oh, it's so beautiful.
On your mark, get set, go.
I wasn't too sure.
For some people is.
How much? You can get me a little later.
It's like surviving.
He's got to do this. You want some of these to take with you, don't you? Yeah. Yeah, no, we want to get them out to people. Yeah, you want, I told you, I promised you that something. Yeah, I need 10.
I need to get some copies made. How many people do we have?
Or have a good copy.
I like to, I can get some of those to take back with me too before they're all gone.
You want some of these to take back? You sure you don't want one of those for your board people? How many people on the board? 13. For anyone who may not get these, I've got 2 boxes of these sitting in the office, of which I'm going to ship a box down to Susie.
Matt, Bill, may I take a few more?
Please, this one. Very good, sir. Is that enough?
To do TRI data from DEQ,
Huh?
do TRI from
We need to get some of
DEQ,
these to Lisa.
cover is the most hideous thing I've ever seen.
I can do that.
Well, I can have,
The document, the TRI.
well, I'll catch up. Paul, we can
Computer
send them down
graphic
to
illustrated fish.
Oh, really?
Oh my god. And someone even drew a pelican tree. And the trees are just basically like, you know,
Do you
have
want
your
to
mouth
take some of these
draw.
reports, or do you
It's just
have,
like these squirrel. Oh.
you have the,
It sounds
you
inspirational.
have the report?
Visually inspirational.
Yeah, but yeah, I'll talk about it on my way home.
I got some more.
I have more complaints about it. But
I want to see a copy.
they listed references at the back, associations to call. LCA, the National Chemical Association, Manufacturers Association are listed, but not one citizens group.
Well,
and
let's go talk to him.
Peggy Franklin was on the committee. Mona was on the committee. And they got everything signed. Oh, it's a piece of propaganda like I've never seen.
Is Susie, did I get the sheet back? Yeah, I did. Thank you. Okay, thank you. I found it. Okay, we ready? Everybody's ready?
Why not?
I don't know what happened. I gave her 20. Just right here.
Is it under those things?
They're not ready. Hey, we're ready. Are you ready?
Let's go.
Ready.
We lost money. We're having a little problem here.
Everybody all the time.
I lost a bunch last night.
Look again in here. I don't remember.
I saw you put a $20 on the table.
Oh my God. It's okay though, thank God.
Mary Lee?
Oh, don't worry about it, that's okay.
I'll certify that last statement.
Yeah, thank you, Willie. I'm so busy thinking about other things. There we go, we got it, we found it, though. We weren't
Well,
gonna move till
as
we did.
I scan the
Okay.
room here.
Who's making up
know
for the
he's
20?
saying, look at it, we say she was an isolated incident. Bill?
Okay, we have a guest here before Paul speaks with us. Miss Shelley, oh goodness, Shelley, I don't have your birthday
Welch.
card. Welch is here to share with us an idea and a concept about doing some documentary work, I believe, on the project in the basin.
My name is Shelley Welch, and I'm president of a video production company here in town called Apropos Productions Incorporated. I'm a company that works with nonprofit groups, helping them use video for teaching, education, information, whatever. I also have a part of my company in which I'm trying to develop educational programming, and another part in which I'm trying to develop documentary program. For a while, I've been gathering stuff and have been trying to figure out how to go forward on a documentary on the Mississippi River Valley system. And I was talking to Neil Andre with the Dolphin Defenders. I'm working with Neil in a project we're doing with the Wilderness Society out of Washington. I'm doing a documentary, when we find funding, I'm doing a documentary on the Defenders and doing a handbook that would help teach people how to set up groups similar to the Dolphin Defenders around the country, because he's been getting requests from all over the country from adults who are trying to set up similar groups. I was mentioning a project on the Mississippi River that I had wanted to do, and I had already at that point started writing letters to other groups, and he mentioned the Mississippi River Basin Alliance, which I had not known about at that time. I then wrote to Bill Redding in Madison with a letter saying what I would like to do, and I met with Bill yesterday and presented him with a proposal and a budget for the project I would like to do, and I've left copies over here for you, along with a little summary of who I am. What I like to do with nonprofits is, I am officially a for-profit company, although honestly I'm not very profitable at this time because I'm just 3 years old. I was in the news business for 16 years, 10 years with ABC Network News. I just started this company about 2 years ago. But what I do, I'm a for-profit company. I would link with nonprofit groups on projects that are of interest to both of us. Then I find funders who might be willing to fund the projects we're interested in doing. I write the grant letters. I search for the funding along with the group with which I link to try to find funding to do the project. In a project like I hope to do with the Mississippi River Basin Alliance, we then, once we get the funding, start producing the program. We together approach a public station, television station in one market, or in your case, in a number of markets because you are up and down the river, to ask that those stations to be the presenting stations to the public broadcasting systems, and try to get the documentary aired on public broadcasting regionally, hopefully nationally, but you never know, that's a chance. You try to get them to run it, but you don't know. So all I wanted to do, Bill asked me to bring these today, is to pass them out to you, and I know you're in a transition, I know you've just hired a new director, and I know you're just beginning. I'd like you to just have this in your pile to consider. I would certainly like to work with Mississippi River Basin Alliance to find funding for a documentary such as this. I would say my proposal is a conservative proposal. After talking to Bill yesterday, I realized we could be a lot more activist, which I would love to be. I came from the news. I would love that side of it. I just didn't realize you'd want to be that. I would love to do one. I don't mention toxics in here. I don't mention a lot of that. I was looking really at the river system. The budget you have, it looks like a lot of money. It is, but this would be broadcast quality. This is my ideal budget. I have 18 to 20 days of shooting. I put in all the money we would need for graphics. I put in the money for music. This is an ideal budget. If we decided to undertake the project, couldn't find quite all of that. There are cuts that can be made, but this would be the ideal budget. And this would be for an hour-long documentary, or actually 5730, which is what the public broadcasting system was. So I just ask that you hold it and consider it. And I know Sue's coming in a couple months. I would very much like to kind of link and go ahead. And I'm already kind of gathering foundation names, and once we have a go, I'll start working with them and try to get it done.
Some of these petrochemical companies.
Yeah,
So, am I, making the assumption that, we with the, Base Alliance could, make some suggestions in regards to, environmental social justice, environmental justice, toxics?
Oh, definitely.
As
This
far
would
as the
be
actual-
your project, it wouldn't be mine. This would be you, you would be my client. So it would be, I say in there partly, I would research, write, and produce, but it would be in close consultation with all of you, because this would be your project, not mine.
What's the likelihood that this actually gets to be on a PBS affiliate? How does that work?
Well, I'm working with another project right now, which is searching for funding with the public station here, KETC. We're looking for money for a documentary on the Olympics that were held here in 1904. If we find the funding, it will be on KETC. They will offer it to all the other public stations in the country. Then it is up to each station whether or not they put it in their schedule. Depending on the subject and the content and the approval, PBS can offer it in their national schedule. That would be the ideal, because then they would feed it down, they would be doing some publicity. That depends on the context, depends on them signing off. They like to have a little more input than you may feel that you want. But it definitely would get on locally if you find one that would be a presenting station. And I cannot imagine that with all of the cities that you guys are connected with up and down the river, that somebody or a group of them might not be a presenting group to the system.
And we could also market this and sell it.
You could do whatever you want with it. It would be yours. Now, I did put in there, because it would be yours, you would, it would be your project. It would not be mine. I do put in there, we would share the copyright, but what we would do with it would be the alliance, because it would be an alliance project. What I did include in there, I'm working with another group called the World Bird Sanctuary, which is here in town. We are trying to find funding to do a series of programs on birds that they wanted to market to elementary teachers nationwide. That has not happened yet. We have not found the money for that. And that would be more of a lot of the time would be given for free, and that's a different project. But the gist of it is, when I was doing this proposal, I realized if you had interest in your educate as part of your mission to market smaller segments on wetlands or on toxics or on flooding or whatever, I think we would have enough material that we would have shot in the course of a documentary, that we could put together smaller 5 to 7 minute units, that we could work together, come up with curriculum materials and market however we would want. But the budget that I've included has the money for the shooting of those in there. It does not have post-production. It does not have the cost for writing and developing curriculum materials. That would just be an additional use for the footage you would have. And you would own all the footage that we would shoot for use however you would want, your PSAs for your groups or anything. And I think that's about it. It's all in there. As I said, this is a general proposal. Don't feel we're tied to that. And I'll just hope to hear, because I would like to go ahead. I have not seen anything like what I have wanted to do. It may be out there. I have not seen it. And I have not seen anything that really does the system and explains it. And this, of course, in our part of the world became, because of the flooding last summer, a lot more people are thinking and talking about levees and dams and all of that. And I think we're now at a good time for this kind of education. And I don't know who else is doing it. So I present it to you and hope you will consider it favorably. And hope to hear from you.
Thank you, Shelley.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Thank you very much for coming by and sharing that with us. Appreciate it. Next, Paul, we're gonna hear from you. You're gonna share with us?
Ready to go.
Okay.
You're ready.
All right,
Does
we're
everybody
ready
have
for
one
you.
of these?
How you doing? Good to
More,
have
got a
one.
couple more, yeah. There are, please, well, first of all, thanks for inviting me up to talk about a project that you've known about for a year and a half, that Ian Robinson has been up to talk with you about a couple times, and I've been up to talk with you a couple times, that I've been on the horn with Bill about many times, and that Ann's been on the horn with most of you on many, many occasions. Maybe before I get started on the new report to Miss River, if I could just add quickly a brief update to what Joe told you about Prairie Island earlier. One of the reasons I couldn't make it down last night, one was because I was on jury duty. Fortunately, I was pinch hit. I was on call jury duty. So I didn't have to ever go in, but I couldn't leave town until 5 o'clock yesterday. I wouldn't have been able to leave it anyhow because we had critical hearings before the Senate Environment Committee in Minnesota on the Prairie Island nuclear waste dump issue. I was an expert witness for the Indian community 2.5 years ago during the hearings and been deeply involved in that issue ever since. And I was testifying along with members of the community and a wonderful person, Bob Pollack, from the Union of Concerned Scientists. And the committee kept him for an hour and a half. Right now, this committee is tied. It's 8 for us, 8 against us, and 2 swings. So if we get one of the swings, the bill fails on a tied vote. Not to say that they might not find some kind of screwy way to get it onto the floor somehow, but it'll be very difficult for them to do that. And you've probably heard there's been all kinds of real nasty hardball played by NSP, threatening people's, contracts for low-income energy efficiency programs, threats to the Indian community. There was an investigation the Minnesota Department of Public Service did regarding an issue I brought up in my testimony 2.5 years ago, whether or not the steam generators at $250 million component part, $250 million for each unit, a $500 million component part, is we brought up in testimony 2.5 years ago, that same part in other plants has been deteriorating. And a nuclear power plant in Portland closed a couple of months ago because of deterioration of this part. And when we brought, and NSP not only didn't give this information to regulators, they didn't respond honestly to an information request that we sent in during discovery, asking them specifically for that information. And